Well, welcome to Unpluggered as we head towards round four and gather round. And must admit, we normally bounce in with a fair degree of enthusiasm. Looking forward to talking footy. Even after a loss, you find a few things and give yourself reason to move forward. But losses like last week, as I'm sure most people would reflect on, those real gut punches that they go right to the top of the list of some of the worst or one of the worst defeats that you could ever imagine. Slow motion train wreck where you can see your side missing opportunities. You can see a potential nasty script, a potential horror movie in there thinking, well, will this come back to bite us? And sure enough, it does come back to bite us. And, you know, I did put on Twitter the stages of football grief, and it does ruin a weekend. I actually think the easiest time is probably the 2 or 3 hours immediately after it, because you're kind of still in that mode and you're a bit annoyed and you're processing it, but you can probably switch off for a bit. Like I was able to sit down and watch a movie and just sort of, the next day is terrible. And even, this one's lingering into, we're recording this on a Tuesday night. You're still throwing replays of that around. And look, it happens. You lose games like that from time to time. Teams lose games like that to us from time to time. It's the way it works. But they are very, very hard to take. And, you've got an Easter long weekend where you've got family things to do on the Sunday and the Monday, and you're in the shits. And it's a really shit feeling and a shit experience. And look, I mean, you can't sugarcoat the fact that it was a game they absolutely should have won, and that's taking nothing away from Essendon. I compare it to the Geelong game. The Geelong game we could have won, not necessarily should have, but could have. This game we absolutely should have won without a shadow of a doubt, and we should have been so far up at three-quarter time that none of that mattered in the last. And occasionally you pay for your sins, so to speak, and we paid maximum price. And yeah, it takes a little while to get over those results. And Nick, you were one who was obviously sitting through that at the ground, and yeah, they don't get much worse than that.
It reminded me a lot. It reminded me a lot of that Hawthorn one from a year or so ago, where you could just see it happening, the missed opportunities and the poor decision making, and just the continual kind of just giving them another chance every time. Like, we'd burst forward and just kick it to them, or handle it, or just make poor decisions with the ball. And to do it to that mob, I mean, they're just the worst. They are the worst. Yeah. I think I'd probably prefer to lose to Collingwood than to lose to Essendon. It's just they are the worst. And you're right. It just sucks. It sucks because we should have won that game. We were in an incredibly strong position to win the game, and we just threw it away. And like you said, you have to pay credit to Essendon because they kept playing. They kept playing to the final siren, and they won it in the end because they wanted it more, and ultimately we didn't. And I wonder if it's just a sign of young team and inexperience and not being able to settle down and do the smart football things that good teams do. But we played pretty good footy in some patches, but for the most part it was pretty awful. It was hard to watch, and the amount of, it's funny, the amount of people that kind of tweet us and engage with us after a loss is probably even more so than after a win. And I think everyone's kind of saying the same thing. It was like at quarter time, it was just inevitable. It felt like it was inevitable when you miss so many opportunities, and most of them were kickable, shots at goal that you'd put money on any other AFL player kicking those goals. But us, in a tight game against a team who are a rival of ours in terms of what we're hoping and expecting and preparing for this season, in terms of being kind of fringe finalists, somewhere between in the lower half of the 8, etc. They want to be in the same position. They're also a young team trying to win as many games as they can, and so they are a rival. And we've had some pretty awful losses to them in the last 30 years, 50 years, 150 years. But it just hurts. It hurts losing to this mob, and the way that we did it hurts even more, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and quarter time, we'd missed some opportunities, but we kicked the first 2 of the second quarter, and we're dominating again. We're up by 4 goals, and probably felt worse at halftime because we missed 3 set shots in a row, hit the post twice, and come straight out after halftime. Membry drops a mark in the goal square, Essendon go coast to coast and kick one. We hit the post in the last minute of the quarter, they go coast to coast and kick one. It just kept happening time and time again.
Yeah, I mean, you say, the game probably should have been over at 3/4 time. You'd almost say you feel like it should have been over at quarter time. We should have broken them by that stage, it feels like.
Yeah. Should have been 6-2. We should have kicked 6-2.
If we were 6-2 and they only ended up on that 1-1 at quarter time, they're broken. That's it. The game's over. But we give them those 2 late goals, gives them a nice run into the into the second quarter, and I mean, again, as you say, we kicked 2 goals early again, and just we let them get 2 back, and it's just giving them those opportunities that we shouldn't. We just gave them the ball and said, take it and go. And there was the whole thing Ross came out with this after the game was, if we have one player that goes, I'll let Jack Steele do that, you just think, that's the mentality. You go, we can't have one player do that sort of thing. As soon as you get one player, another one falls, and another one will fall, and another one will fall. It just gets to a point where, it's frustrating to watch. You can see that's the kind of thing that's happening. You can see that a player has not thrown themselves in like they did the week before. You see a player made a bad decision that last week they wouldn't have. It's just watching. It was like a train crash almost. Look at it and go. You could see it happening, and there's nothing you can do about it. But there was someone that could have done something about it. And it was just painful to stand there and watch. And I mean, you were up and about early, obviously, and I mean, there wasn't many Essendon fans around where I was standing, but by the end of it, they were really up and about, and we should never have got to that point. It just should never have got to that point on the day.
Yeah, and I mean, that last quarter, we played Adelaide and Cairns a few years ago, and that whole last quarter lived in Adelaide's forward line, and they didn't kick the winning goal until the last couple of minutes, but you could see it coming the whole way through. It was the same here. Essendon had so many inside 50s and so many shots. We looked like we were running up and down on the spot, and you're like, this is going to happen soon. It's going to be the one that gets us, and of course it's the package, a pain in the ass nickname, and sinks one from outside 50, and before that he got a free kick that was very dumb for us to give away in the pocket, where Stocker just turned around and tackled him, basically.
Well, actually, I mean, right in front of me, and if anything, Stringers initiated that contact.
Right.
It should never have been a free kick in the first place.
Okay. On TV, it looked like he'd held him, but if there was a better view at the ground...
Stringers run straight to him, and it's almost been like a tackle around the head, and then he's... Yeah. Because he was ball side, he's apparently blocking. That's where it all comes down to.
Yeah, I think Stocker just needed to... back into him rather than turning around and facing him. Obviously, once you do that and it's perceived that you've taken your eyes off the ball, but even those little things, like at the end when Zach Jones, it was a slight hold that he had on Parrish at the end, but you just know they're going to pay those in those moments, and you just needed those little breaks. The little one where we were streaking forward late, where it ends up with Ryan Burns in a one-on-one. With all due respect to Ryan Burns, that's not ideal. If you look at the replay of that, we had 3 players streaming inside 50. Jack Steele had 40 metres of space. And the one at the end of the third quarter, Caminiti just slipped over. I think I got a text from Darren Berry, who was on this podcast, saying giraffe on ice, which is kind of what it looked like.
I thought he did okay there.
He played well.
He got his feet. No, he actually got his back up on his feet. It was just... He probably could have kept running further in, but he just once he gathered his feet, he kicked it.
But without
he didn't
that
realize
step,
he didn't realize he had time to almost run it all the way in.
If he does that, okay. We're 18 up instead of 7 at 3/4 time, and there's a million of those. We could go on all day, but it's just one of those ones where all of the things you fear happen at the same time. And, as I said earlier, Nick, I didn't necessarily want to, wasn't looking forward to this podcast because you didn't want to talk about it. But I think one of the better parts about the podcast is it does provide that sort of therapy. Like all weekend, people would bring up footy at a family lunch and I'd change the subject. I'd be like, no, we're talking about something else, what's on TV or whatever. But yeah, this time, it kind of allows you to just cleanse some of those thoughts a bit.
100%. I think we've mentioned it a few times. Just that kind of cathartic release that we get as fans to be able to, talk through it with each other. I think Charlie talked about it in similar kind of terms. Charlie Clausen, when he's been on the show, kind of talking about sitting in the lunatics wing, just all kind of talking the same shit. And it is nice. Like you, I wasn't looking forward to this. I said to you guys off air, I couldn't bring myself to watch the replay this week, and I normally do, even if we have had a bad loss or whatever. I just could not bring myself to rewatch this one, and there was just so many. There were uncharacteristic things that went wrong. I mean, Cal Wilkie's probably worst game of his career, but then there were things that are becoming characteristic for us, and our decision making. One of the things I've noticed over the first couple of weeks of this season so far is kind of that the ability to miss the first option and overthink things and take too much time, and you often will win a clearance or win possession and miss the first handball to your runner running past and have to kind of swing around and try and kick long or whatever. And it just happens so many times on the weekend. And you talked about that one with Ryan Burns in the goal square and Jack Steele running towards goal and all those sorts of things, where if you're in the moment and you trust your instinct and you trust the players around you, you take that first option, you take the instinctual hand pass or the instinctual kick that might be, lowering the eyes and just hitting up the target rather than blasting to the top of the goal square or whatever. And I just feel like that probably is an element of inexperience. This is a really, really young team, and the players we've had out, generally guys that have played a lot of footy. When you look at those guys, Dougal Howard and Hunter Clark, and even Mason Wood and Jimmy Webster and those guys who might not be kind of household names as much as others, but they're guys that have played 100, 150 games of footy. And I think we do miss that element of experience of guys who can just lower the eyes, just kind of settle everyone down for a minute and make a good decision, rather than kind of, you said it before, H, just panicking with the ball. And whether that panic means rushing something and just banging the ball on your foot and trying to kick it as long as possible, or not trusting yourself. And you see someone out of the corner of your eye and not giving the handball off, or not picking the better option shorter rather than kicking long. It just feels like there's a lot of that at the moment, and it makes the game hard to watch, I think, as a fan, as a viewer, because you're constantly thinking, why didn't he do this? It's such an easy game sometimes. It's just such a simple thing to do, and it feels like a lot of the time on the weekend. But even there's been moments in the first two games where we've just made it so much harder for ourselves by not doing the easy things.
Yeah, and Collingwood game, we let them back in a couple of times. Geelong game, we had numerous chances to take the lead. And look, I'm torn between, I actually feel it's a funny thing to say, but I feel like we're a little bit more advanced than we were 12 months ago. I actually feel like we're a slightly better side than last year. And I feel like we are a top 8 side on most characteristics, but we are young and we are making mistakes. Obviously, we've had a few injuries as well. You don't want to drop games like that. That's not making excuses. I mean, we're 1 and 2, and that's frustrating. But I still have a degree of confidence that we're actually not a bad side, and that was a wasted opportunity for a side that should have won the game, not necessarily signs of deep flaws within the group or anything like that. It's a funny one. I don't know. I just watch us this year, and it feels like we're a little bit more dangerous, and we're slightly better with ball in hand. We're a bit quicker. We still defend as well, but we just haven't nailed a couple of really key opportunities to be 3 and zip. And it leaves us in a precarious position. We play a game this week we should win, but we are depleted. They're also depleted. So, acknowledging that. But, you're in a position where if all of a sudden you have a shocker and drop that game, you then play the Giants next week, you're 1-4 and you're fucked, basically. So you've really got to take this chance this week and straighten things up on the back of what happened in that game. So, yeah, it's probably the annoyance of us leaving ourselves precarious when I feel we're better than a side that should be precarious.
Yeah, I was going to say, I couldn't imagine how we'd be feeling right now still as well. The one saving grace that there was from that game, that goal, that behind from Gresham didn't go through at the end and seal it. I just saw him pop up and I thought, here you go, here's the script, isn't it? And managed to just miss, and you're a bit like, you just knew something like that was coming. And yeah, I mean, sort of go, okay, glad it didn't happen. That
was the most bad option. Instead, we got the second most bad option with Stringer.
Yeah, but I think he had 8 touches for the day, and I think half were clangers. So we're like, yeah, well, he finally hit a Kilda target, which was amazing. But yeah, it was just a day you go, well, okay, great.
By the way, the sounds of Michael Christian back in the old 3AW offices reflecting on how much he hated St Kilda back in the day remains true. Windhager suspended for what looked like literally running past someone, to me anyway. He did
hit him high, so there's not much you can do.
Did he hit him high, or did they sort of collide?
No, it was hip to shoulder, hip to sort of head kind of thing. I saw it happen live, and I messaged a few people watching at home and said, has anything come of this? And they're all going, no, heard nothing about it. And I thought,
my brother said it. I missed it live. My brother said Windy might be in a bit of trouble here. No, I haven't seen it. So
I knew straight away he was going to be in trouble. So I messaged a few people and said, oh, how bad was it? And they went, how bad was what? And I went, And I'm thinking, well, coverage has missed it. And I'm sort of thinking, well, I reckon the tribunal or the match review won't miss it. So, it's just
we was concussed, whether it was that incident or the one a bit later.
No, the one he went off for was the Seb Ross tackle, which also got his shoulder.
It was listed as an ankle, though, wasn't it? I think they've listed it as an ankle injury, not a concussion.
Well, he went off holding his shoulder as well. So it was it was a crunching tackle by Seb. That was and you look at that, go, he gets nothing for that tackle. So it was just a perfect tackle.
It says something about Seb too, that straight away he patted him on the head as if to sort of say, legitimately, I didn't mean to hurt you there. Which, good on him. So.
No, it was just the old, just drove him into the ground. And I mean, if we go, well, luckily the results usually what causes what the outcome is. So I guess we're lucky in that case. And and
before we look at that with Windhager, obviously Liam Baker got suspended for a week, but has appealed that, so that'll be a Wednesday night tribunal hearing, you would think. I mean, they'll face similar challenges to Max King in that it's very difficult to downgrade. Medium impact, I think, is what he would have got done for, given he hit him in the head. I think they basically say if you make head-high contact, there's always a potential for injury. So, look, it'll be tough for them to get off, but you wouldn't rule it out, given our luck, I guess. But clearly, I mean, Richmond lose Lynch and Bolter, and we'll talk more about that later.
Baker's appeal's been denied, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he's going to miss.
Denied.
Yep. So I think he went to the tribunal tonight.
Oh, right, that was quick. I thought it'd be tomorrow
just
night.
Seen it now that he's he's out. So
okay,
that's quick.
So that's quick because usually if they announce the charge on a Monday and they decide to challenge it on a Tuesday, normally it would be the following day. So there you go. Maybe they needed a bit more time to prepare, but at least that's confirmed now, so we can mention that. Just before we move on
it might have been going to Adelaide, being I think teams are going pretty early this week, so
fair.
It may have been that case.
Fair. Before we touch on the votes, I did mention we've mentioned it in the past. I think last year the cathartic nature of Ross Lyon's press conferences sometimes. So I didn't. I haven't watched any of the replay. I didn't watch a lot of footy for the rest of the weekend. I watched a little bit of that Richmond Sydney game, but that was about it. But I did watch Ross's presser the following day when I was walking the dog. And I often get the feeling that when Ross is speaking at those pressers, that he's only in part speaking to the media and only in part speaking to us, and that he's speaking to his own players a little bit. You know, when he mentioned guys like Windhager and Owen saying, "Oh, you got to look at Harvey and Enright and not play well every second week, but play well 4 out of 5," and that type of messaging. And he spoke about how they're learning and they're young and they're babies and all of that sort of stuff. And it does give you that reassurance, thinking, yeah, they know why they lost, they know what's going on, they're talking to the right people, they're doing the right stuff. And I think at least, Nick, that I get a little bit out of those presses more than perhaps we have in the past.
Yeah, I think. Look, Ross Lyon doesn't do or say anything without knowing exactly what he's doing and saying. And I think you're right. There are some hidden but pointed messages in his presses. And I also feel like I don't think he would say anything in those presses that he wouldn't say directly to any of those blokes' faces, or to the people in the room kind of before he does the presser. So I don't think anything out of that would be a surprise to the playing group. What I like is that he's able to speak to fans through that that mouthpiece through the press conference in a way that fans can understand and get behind what's going on. Like, yes, we understand what happened today. Yes, it's disappointing and it's frustrating, but we know what happened. We've identified it already. We know exactly what happened. We know what we've got to improve on, and we will work on it, and we will get better at it. And you can trust us on that. And there is a bit of that feeling, like, I do too. I think we called it last year. It kind of felt like we were talking to Dad. Like, Dad says it's going to get better, and we trust Dad to make it better. And yes, he's got the Rossisms, and he's a bit goofy and awkward at times and whatever, but he knows exactly what he's saying. He knows exactly what he's doing. And even if he is more hands-off and kind of delegates things to the line coaches and assistants and lots of stuff, I have zero doubt that he is across and overseeing everything. And that he will be catching up with those assistants as a group, going through the footage, going through the matchups, all those things before it even gets to the players. It's happening in real time. It's happening post-game, and then it goes to the players, and then it goes to the media, and then they spend all week fixing the things that they've identified on the day, on the night, etc. And yeah, I have. It's funny because I haven't been able to say this about a lot of coaches, in my time, but I have absolute faith in Ross that he has the tactical intelligence to identify and rectify just about anything. So
yeah, H, it feels that way, like that he, you get some coaches, and I'm sure they know, they all know, but you'll get some coaches who say, we'll go to work during the week and we'll try to fix the things that went wrong, and we'll go back to the drawing board and we'll learn, and look, that's all true, but they don't say anything. Whereas Ross comes out and he'll be like, we started doing this, then they did this and this happened, we lost control of this in X, Y, and Z stats. We tried to fix it with this. It didn't work. We tried to fix it with that. It worked for a little while, but then they did this. And you're kind of looking at it going, oh, okay, fair enough. That makes sense. It's why we lost.
It can be quite interesting because, as you're saying, he can give us a lot, but he can also be the best at saying a lot, but saying nothing, but saying nothing, but saying a lot. It's like he can ramble on and it means absolutely nothing, or he gives it just a real pointer thing, and you go, that's a real message to the group. So, yeah, that's, as you're saying, the press conference can be quite fun at times. It's depending on how it's gone. I think someone I can't remember who said it, but someone goes, Cuddly Ross is gone this week. It's definitely vanished. But he put up a good performance this week, and he'll come back and sit down the table with that big goofy smile he has. That's yeah. I mean, that's what we want to see. That's what we obviously, that's how we want to see him turn up every week, and he gives us something or gives us nothing. And as you say, bit of a different breed to the other coaches in the league, and but hey, we love it.
Yeah, I like it very much so. I think it's what we need at the moment, particularly after days like that. The Jack Steele MVP award, I gave a vote to Brad Hill. Kept running, was one of our better players in the last quarter when everyone was jogging on the spot. Jack Higgins just kicked 3 out of 9. They were all nice goals. And I think he's in good form now over the last couple of weeks. I thought Jack Steele worked really hard in the middle. I thought Jack Sinclair was found that touch from the week before, 30 possessions. Rowan Marshall, battling against Draper and Goldstein, beat both of them. Started to tire at the end, which is obviously something we have to look at, but he was brave, and I thought Seb Ross was definitely our best player. Made the right decisions. He and Steele controlled the middle for us, and he was probably the most consistent four-quarter player, I thought, on the ground for us, and gave him the 3 votes. H, how did you separate them?
A bit spread out this week. I was a few players I thought deserved something, but I didn't find really anyone who stood head and shoulders above the rest. While it was a loss, there was a reasonably level group over the most of the match. Gave one to Sinclair, one to Marshall, and one to Hill. I gave one also to Philippou. I almost could have given him 2. I thought he was actually really good. Really, really good. Made contests. He took some really nice marks at times. Made the positions. He probably he had the one shot at goal that was in probably about 30 odd out on a little bit of an angle. Probably should have put that through, which really again would have been probably may have bumped him up to that 2 but overall, and he's really developing quite well. It's what if he can put up, I guess, that kind of performance on the day most weeks. He's just going to bring so much for us. One of the main things from that I meant to say too was the 6 tackles as well on the day. He's laid some really nice ones, and the pressure he's putting on there and helping out with is it's starting to really build within that group as well. Then we go up to 2. I got 2 to Jack Higgins. I mean, he looked like the only one who was going to get a goal at some points there. And as I say, 3 out of 9. It's 3 out of the 9 goals. What else did he have? It was 15 touches and 5 tackles. I mean, that's as much as you can ask from a small forward. Yeah. You couldn't ask any more. And he'll give us weeks where he might kick 2 or 3 and he has 6 touches and doesn't tackle anyone. Still you go, okay, he's kicked 2 goals. That's pretty good for us. We needed those. But 3 in those numbers, that's a really good game from him again. He's had a great start to the season. 2 to Steele, he led most of the day. Thought, just everywhere, did as much as he could. It said Ross, he was very impressive. As was saying, but he looked a bit quicker than usual. I don't know what it was. I don't know whether I was saying last week, Essendon a little bit of a slowish team. I don't know whether that made him look a little bit quicker than normal, but he was giving us good drive. He was getting ball out of the middle. He was tackling hard, as we were saying before. The tackle on Durham that drove him into the ground, and it was that sort of just putting his body on the line and giving as much as he could on the day. And for me, probably unlucky that I didn't put him out there clear votes like yourselves did.
Nick?
Really tough one. I wanted to give Philippou a vote, but I thought he was kind of a bit of the example of the guy, and clearly not the only one. I think most of the team had this issue of that kind of decision-making or kind of skipping that first option. I don't like the fact at the moment, I know that he's spending more time in the middle, and I would prefer him to be spending more time up forward to develop and having Mitch in the middle. But I want to see him use his weapons more, which is his kicking ability, especially in the middle. I think he can be really damaging if we are going to play him there, but it does feel like that we're getting a little bit too inside with him, and I think about 65 of his possessions are kind of little handballs. And I have no issue with that becoming his game or part of his game. I do think that he is ultimately going to be a midfielder and a really good midfielder. But I think we just got to get him playing his natural footy again, which is, whether that's 50% half forward, 50% in the middle, but playing his natural game, which is wheeling around and using his boot and being that dynamic kind of player. And that was the only reason that I couldn't fit him in for votes. But I thought that he was very good otherwise. I gave one to Hill, Higgins, Sinclair, and Marshall. Oh, and Jack Steele as well. Just all solid games. Like you said, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head. I think Jack Sinclair is kind of building into his game. I think as he plays more, we'll see more of the Jack Sinclair that we've become accustomed to over the last couple of years. But he did seem like he was getting across the ground better. I think there was one, he kicked a goal, but I think there was another one where he was just on 50 where he gave it off and probably should have had a ping because I think he would have kicked it from there. But he's looking pretty good, but he's not quite back to his regular form. Jack Steele, I thought, led from the front, as both of you guys said. Josh Battle, I gave 2. I think he's been our best defender this year. I think he took 9 marks. We had a couple of other blokes to have 9 marks to lead our players, but he was the only key tall, big, powerful guy to do that. And I think what we saw with Cal Wilkie kind of being a little out of form or overwhelmed or whatever
Dropping
it was,
marks,
that Battle really stood up and took that on himself. I know that we're in the kind of the dying stages of getting him through to sign a new contract. I really hope that happens soon because he's a really important part of our structure and our team. And has been one of our better players in all 3 games, I thought, so far this season. Probably our best defender so far this season. And Seb Ross, for all the reasons that you guys have given. The 3 votes, I think, just kind of led from the front, won it inside and outside, made good decisions. It was almost a bit of a second win for Seb over the last few weeks. Like you said, H, he does look a bit quicker. I don't know if he's dropped a couple of kilos or whatever. He's always been a pretty good runner, but he does look quicker. Whether that's whether he's dropped some weight or whether it's just his kind of role now in the team that he can spend a bit more time outside rather than kind of diminishing his game, spending 90% in and under. It does feel like he's got the ability to run and get across the ground. He looks freer, I think, freer to play footy, and doesn't feel like there's as much pressure on him to do everything, which is good to see.
Definitely, and obviously no Windhager this week, so some of those inside mids will have a bit more responsibility. The Jason Blake Award, H, if you want to kick us off with that one.
I tried finding some of it. It was a little bit, I guess, trying to work out who it was, because it seemed like most of the players who actually played well got a pretty good rap. So I was going around. The only player we didn't really mention again was Ryan Burns, and I'm just basing this pretty much on the 3 weeks so far this year. He's been quite consistent. He's doing his job, doing everything he can to get us in the line. He just seems to pop up when we need something at some stages. It's like you get the players who do their job and just get the possession on the day, but it seems to be quite a few times we've seen him this year when we've really needed someone to actually appear and do something. And he did it a few times on the weekend again. I was looking at, I guess the possessions and stuff he's had. That wasn't huge numbers. It wasn't that, but he did good things with them, and that's all I can really go on. He was one of only, I think it was 3 players who didn't have a clanger on the weekend. Every possession he had ended up in being something towards us, getting the ball down our way. So, yeah, just on his form so far this year, as we've given him a little bit of a rep so far, but it doesn't seem to happen anywhere else.
Fair. Absolutely. Nick, your Jason Blake Award?
A little bit of a single week one for me this week. I wanted to give some recognition to Anthony Caminiti. I thought he worked really hard. He didn't always get the rewards. He kicked 2 goals. Should have had 3. at least. The fourth was probably kickable as well, but a bit tougher. He's not Max King. We shouldn't expect him to be Max King, but he worked really hard. He contested. He ran. The amount of times that he pushed up into the middle to provide a contest and put some pressure on and a body there to fill up space. Just little things that I'm not sure he was quite fit enough to do last year. But it does look like he's fitter and stronger. He trusts himself. It seems like he trusts himself more. And I just thought he played a really solid all-around game. Yes, he can do things better. No, he's not a superstar. But I thought he worked really hard, and I thought he played his role pretty well in this game. And it's not something that I think a lot of people have kind of spoken about, whether it's on the broadcast or supporters even. So yeah, I just wanted to give him a bit of credit for that.
No, I agree. Caminiti was to be mine as well. I think he came in late for Max King, knowing it was probably a short-term assignment, and he did all that could really be asked of him. I think in that wasn't perfect and wasn't Max, but can't expect him to be. As Ross Lyon said, he's kicked 20 goals in his first season as a teenager who wasn't even drafted. So he's got great hands. The mark he took in the last quarter was a beauty over the top of the pack. So I'm going to double down on that one as well. The Shannon Knoll Award, Nick, if you wanted to keep that going.
This is really tough because I think everyone could kind of lift. I don't know, it's going to be harsh because his first 2 weeks were really good, Tim Embry, but I thought he was average at best on the weekend, and it was in a number of avenues. I don't think he provided his kind of regular leadership. We spoke about Jack Steele leading and his ability to lead. We've talked about Seb Ross leading from the front, Josh Battle, leading down back in the relative absence of Cal Wilkie, but we know that Cal's a really good leader anyway. Tim Embry is someone who's been a really good leader for us, over the last decade. And I felt like that was probably just lacking a little bit this week. Whether it was just because it wasn't going our way and we weren't getting the things kind of bouncing in our favour, but I just felt that he was a bit off. And I think generally when he plays well, we play well. When he's leading well, we play well and we win more often. And if he can get back to kind of his regular type of game, then we'll be in a pretty good spot, I think, this week, regardless of who's in and out.
Yeah, I think that was crucial. We showed how important he is by the fact that he was so quiet on the weekend and what that did. Hates your Shannon Knoll Lift Award?
There's the obvious one, the one that everyone has talked about this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been just done to his death now. We know he didn't have a great day in Rolly Bonner. You look at his raw stats and you go 32 touches, 12 rebound 50s, 7 inside 50s, 6 clangers. You go, okay, 6 clangers, a bit ordinary, but it was the other stat that comes out from another source that said 17 turnovers. But I just wound it back and I was looking at the overalls of everything together. And I looked at the clangers, I went 6, okay. But I saw Rowan Marshall had 14 clangers. And I was a bit like, he's in the middle of the ground and that's a little bit high. I mean, I'll give it a vote, but yeah, we can't be affording 14 clangers from our ruckman in the middle of the ground. That's something we've probably got to be looking at a bit harsher, I guess, compared to a running defender who's on the day looks like he didn't have great targets to be kicking to, that we weren't providing as well as other weeks we have, and that sort of thing. I mean, so if Rowan can get that right in the middle, I think we're going much better. The week before, he won a lot more hit outs and things this week compared to last week, but he didn't use the ball well. Last week he didn't get a lot of hit outs, but he used the ball brilliantly. So we needed a happy medium there of getting first hands of the ball and using it well. I mean, I gave him a vote, but there's just that little thing he needs to work on.
I know you mentioned that he has been the talking point all week, but put a slightly different spin on it with Riley Bonner. And look, he's had 32, he's had 29 kicks and all that sort of stuff. It looks good on paper, but I just get the feeling, and he's worrying me a little bit, Riley Bonner, and it might sound harsh, but it feels at this stage like he's a minor broken link in the chain, in that he can fit into that chain and he can be a part of that, but it's almost like he's playing a slightly different game to everybody else, in that some of his decision making, like he'll go for options that no one else is going for and he'll turn it over. He'll run and carry in situations where we would feed it. He's not quite as physical. Our defence is very, very good and very compact in the contest, and his physical presence in the contest is probably not what you want it to be. I'm not saying he's soft. He just gets pushed out of the way a little bit. There are times where he goes off the ground instead of sort of bodying the ball. I think he's a capable footballer who's playing a game, but it's not necessarily within our system just yet. I think we find sometimes that we're linking up and then it comes to him and then the play changes a little bit. So I think he can fit into what we're doing, but he's not at the moment. So he's going to play because we don't have a stack of options on our list at the moment. But yeah, I don't know if Riley Bonner needs to watch a few more tapes, but I'm not sure he's playing quite the way we want him to at the moment for mine.
Is it just a matter that he hasn't been within the system for long enough? When he came in late, only played a couple of games. It could be as simple as that, or it could just be that what he does and wants to do, isn't quite where we're at. But I was going to say the same thing. I think he's going to play regardless for the moment, because there aren't a bunch of blokes kind of knocking the door down,
and
ready
he does
to come in.
As well, so
for sure, I think he's a pretty good footballer. Like you said, I think he can play the game. He's just not doing those things at the moment that we need him to do in those moments. But I think he can get there. I know that there were a lot of Port players that were shocked when he got the boot from Port, and there were a bunch of our guys that were really happy when we were able to snare him. So, there's a lot to look forward to with someone like Riley Bonner. He's not quite there yet.
Yep. Onwards and upwards, hopefully. Our next special guest